Hello, everyone. This is the David Goodman Reality and Truth Show. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Vanita Lambert, and I have a very special guest today, Selena Morgan. She's a mental health advocate and author, as well as executive director of elementary school. She wears so many hats, but we won't get into all that. Thank you so much for joining us today, Selena. Before we get into why you're here and all the information you have to share with us, I just want to say to everybody out there, do your job to crush COVID. We are almost there. We got this new variant out called Delta something. Sounds like an airline to me.
Yes.
But do your job.
Wear your
If you're
mask.
not allergic, if it doesn't make you sick, or if you're not pregnant, I understand pregnant women not getting it because you got a baby in your stomach.
Yes.
If you can get the vaccine, take it, because people are dying out there.
Yes,
you
they
know?
are.
And I want to be able to continue to hug people and get back to normal. So please do your job. I know Connecticut is doing good so far.
We're doing well so far. It just
Yes.
takes a while, and it takes everyone. We need everyone. It takes a village. We need everyone on board with this. Don't let fear keep you from getting vaccinated.
That's right. And that's going to be, that's a good line there, because we're going to be talking about fear,
And doubt.
anxiety, and everything else.
Yes. So today, Vanita, I am going to talk about managing crippling emotions. But I'm going to begin with fear and doubt, because that's where we are in terms of, we're just coming out of the pandemic. The vaccine is out there. Some people are afraid to take it. They're doubtful about whether or not it works. And every day we face fear and doubt in our lives. But the thing about fear is that it is ever present. It's part of being
real.
human, and it helps
It's
you.
real.
It's actually helpful for you, because if you're not fearful, you can find yourself in a lot of trouble doing things that are detrimental to your health. If you're not fearful of, let's say, just crossing in the middle of the street, you might just cross in the middle of the street and get hit. So, some of us wait until the light changes at the corner to cross. Some of these things keep us safe and keep us healthy. It's when fear begins to stop you from moving forward and stop you from growing, that's when it becomes crippling. And we have all been there. We've all been in relationships where we are fearful. We don't want to move. We can't move forward, but we don't want to leave the relationship because we're fearful we might be by ourselves, or we're fearful of what our parents may think, or we might say, like me, I was in a marriage for a long time, and I said, I don't want my mother to think I'm not trying to make it work, and that wasn't healthy for me. So when fear sort of stops you from moving forward, that's when you need to really step back and take a look at it. Recognize what it is. Try to identify what it is that's making you fearful. You really need to be self-reflective when it comes to fear. And also doubt. Fear and doubt can really hold you back. Can hold you back in your employment if you want to move forward. A lot of times people want to move forward, and you think back, 5 years, 10 years, you go, 5 years ago, I could have been where I am now.
Exactly.
But I was afraid, right? I was afraid.
Exactly.
I was doubtful of my skill. I wasn't sure I could do it. You're afraid of failure. Everyone is. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid that maybe this show won't go over like it should.
No, this show is going over exactly like it should.
Yes. And then you have to put the fear in perspective. It helps if you take it out and you look at it. If you run away from fear, if you run away from doubt, you will find yourself stagnant in life. You won't be able to move forward. You won't be able to move backwards. You won't be able to get anything done. So today we talk about fear and some of the ways that we can conquer fear. And like I said, one of the things you need to do is step back and take a look at what it is you're afraid of. What's making you fearful? Again, I will reference myself and my first marriage. I was fearful of what my mom would say, and then I was fearful. I had 2 children, and I didn't want to do it by myself. I was afraid to do it by myself. And then I finally became very self-reflective. I said, you're afraid to do it by yourself, but guess what? You are doing it by yourself.
Exactly.
Which is why you want to move on. You're doing it by yourself. So that was really very helpful for me. And so I did what I had to do, and I moved on.
So what would be like a starting point of reflecting, of realizing what you're doing wrong? Do you sit down with a pen and a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and put all the good things that's going on in your relationship, for example, and all the bad things that's going on? How would a person begin to just deal with that?
Well, I think the first thing is to decide what it is you think you want to do. I mean, I knew the marriage wasn't working. I knew I wanted to sort of move on, but all these things were going through my head. So the first thing is to write down what you are afraid of.
Okay.
You need to first know what are you afraid of? And then when you write that down, you can say, okay, this is what I'm afraid of. The next step is, what's the worst that can happen to me? What is the very worst thing you can think of that can happen? And then you write that down and you say, okay, now, if that does happen, what are some strategies I can use to get through it? How can I move forward? What can I do about that worst case scenario? Mm-hmm. And keep in mind that as you go through these steps, you're looking at the very, very worst. That probably won't happen. A lot of times, our fear is not based in reality. It's based in our imagination, and we've blown it all out of proportion.
Yep.
So that is stifling us.
And I could name one thing, in particular, that can speak directly to fear. There are so many people in this country that fear the side effects of taking the vaccine. Just to make it really relevant and to put it in the forefront of what our country is going through right now. And I'm going to tell you this little scene that I saw on the news. There was this company in Florida. There was an office, I think like 10 or 12 people or whatever. I don't know if you heard about it. And the whole entire office got COVID. So this is what happened. 2 people died. Everybody caught COVID except the one person that was fully vaccinated. So what does that tell you? You're afraid of the side effects of the vaccine. Here's my thinking, and I think that if I'm alive, I could deal with the side effects.
That's right.
I am so afraid of dying. So when you're sitting there talking about, what you're afraid of, I'm afraid of dying.
Yes.
So I go to the doctor all the time. When my knee swells up, I'm going to the doctor.
Exactly.
Any little thing, I'm there.
Yes.
And
so that's what helped me. I'm afraid of not being able to breathe. See, that's one piece of COVID that I know I'd rather take the vaccine than not being able to breathe, because not being able to breathe is really my worst fear. So, so when you look at your fears, especially with this vaccine, you need to think about what part of this fear are you in control of? Do you have any control over this fear? If you're afraid of the vaccine, which part of that can you control? Any of it? Some of it? Which part of COVID? Are you more afraid of COVID than the vaccine? I'm more afraid of COVID. Some people will say, well, I'm not really, sure that it's out there or that I can get it so you're more afraid of the vaccine. But you have to think it's not just you. It's not just you're considering. When you consider your fear of getting vaccinated, you have to include everybody that you're around.
That's right.
Everybody that you're around. And you can control. Once you get the vaccine, you can control what happens after that. Anything that comes up, you're in control of how you address it.
It's like a peace of mind
once
you get the vaccine. And I had COVID. I had COVID. And I can speak to that directly. I had COVID on April 15th. It was tax day. I'll never forget. I was diagnosed with it, and I had to stay in my bedroom, which I have like a bathroom in my bedroom, and I had fevers. The fevers got really bad. I started hallucinating, and I was getting headaches and things, but it only lasted about 3 or 4 days. I had colds worse than COVID, but the worst part of COVID for me was the loneliness.
Yes.
My husband and son, they set up a little TV tray outside my bedroom door, and they would like bring my soup or whatever, run back into
You had no
another
one to
room,
talk to.
close the door, and call me and say, your chicken noodles on the desk. So I had no human contact. And I don't think that we are meant to be alone. You know,
I agree.
You know,
We are
I think
not.
that's the worst part of, you know, people being in prison. I think that's why they're getting rid of the solitary
it's
portion.
detrimental to
Yes.
elderly people to be alone. The
Oh.
thing that keeps them going is the socialization.
Oh, my
And you can
goodness,
find
yes.
that anywhere. So I'm going to talk a little bit about something else. Still fear. I had a problem with my knee. I had to get an MRI. Never knew I had a fear of claustrophobic. I never knew I was claustrophobic. So I went in and I was like, oh, okay. You know, my hands here, laid back, my eyes wide open. And when I got in there, I freaked out. I said, oh my God, get me out, get me out. So
Really? You screamed?
Yes, I started screaming, get me out, get me out. They got me out. And I started breathing really, really. And this is one of the techniques too. You really need to start breathing. So I breathed my way through it. And I said to the person, is there any other way, anything else? And she said, no. No.
Any other way you could take an
if
MRI?
you want something done with your knee, you have to take the MRI. So I had to talk to myself, and I said, you know what? Nothing's going to happen to you. What's your worst fear that you're in there, that the machines break down and you can't get out? You can move, so you can crawl out if you have to. So I sort of talked myself through it. I started breathing. And then this time I went in, I closed my eyes because I realized it's a visual, you know, it's a visual. So I just closed my eyes, so I didn't know actually when I was in there. But yeah, but I had to conquer that fear. And I forget who said the quote, but the quote is, you know, courage is not the absence of fear, it's the triumph over fear. If you can triumph over fear, you're really courageous. And it takes some talking. One of the things I do is I breathe. I do a lot of breathing, especially when I'm going to get a shot. I'll just breathe deep until I get the shot. And then the other thing I do a lot of self-talk. Talk to myself. Okay, you're all right. Nothing's happening to you. This is the worst of it. And when it's over, you're out and you're finished and you've done what you had to do. And that's worked for me over the years because since that day, I've had, you know, several MRIs. So yeah.
So it's like fear, anxiety, and doubt
And
all
doubt.
at once. I know my son, when he finished high school, he had to take the SATs, of course, to get into college. And he has asthma. And every time he went to go take the SATs, he would have some kind of panic attack and he wouldn't finish. I'm like, you got to go into college. So what I did, and this always comes back to my profession, which is Medicare and life insurance. If you do have a fear or doubt yourself or any type of thoughts that are not healthy going through your mind, the one thing that you can do, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars per hour to go talk to a psychiatrist. If you have a Medicare card, if you have any type of medical card or Husky or whatever health insurance you have,
Yes.
on that card, you have PCP, which is your primary care, and you have SPEC, which is your specialist. You can go and talk to a specialist, a head specialist, that can help you through, you know, mind games and
Yes.
you know, things that play
Yes.
tricks on your mind for
right.
$35 an hour. So I took my son, you know, fast forwarding, to a mental health specialist, you know,
Yes.
and he spoke with him. He gave him rubber bands
Yes,
to put around
yes,
his
there are things you
wrist,
could
to
do. You
pop
could go
his
like this
wrist,
to remember.
and just like things to say to himself, just that thought process. It's all mindset.
It's a
You know, because
mindset.
he thought he couldn't breathe, having a panic attacks and anxiety. As soon as he passed out, he began to, guess what? breathe.
Yes.
So it's all in your mind. So those are things that you can do if you don't know how to start it on your own. If you have trouble just, identifying what your problems
Yes,
are,
yes.
talk to someone. And
to
it's
someone
always
to
good
help
to
you.
talk to a stranger.
Because it depends on what the fear is and how deep it is.
Yeah, and
Because some
doubting
things
yourself.
you can't recognize, you don't know what you're afraid of, and that's what's making you anxious. But just remember, fear is a biological response. And sometimes you get this response, it's a fight or flight thing, like your body's saying either run away or you're ready, prepared to fight. But sometimes there's nothing there for you to fight or flight or run from. So that's why it's so important for you to identify what it is. Once you identify, that's the biggest piece, you can start to break it down. Break it down and figure out what's going on that's making you fearful.
Right, and there's plenty of books that you could read. You have a book out.
Oh, yes, I do.
Let's see what it's about.
It's called, it's actually about fear, doubt, anxiety, and depression. So it's 4 of the most crippling emotions. The book is called Managing Crippling Emotions. You can get it at Amazon.com. And you could just look it up and get it, and it's really good. It gives strategies. It has several steps in here to help you figure out what to do when you're feeling fearful. One of the things to change your biology, the biology of fear, which is your heart is beating fast. You start to feel
sweating.
like you sweat and feel like you can't breathe. So you can consider some strategies. You can exercise if that's one of the if you're feeling a little bit anxious. If you exercise a little bit, that sort of brings that down. Breathing exercises, as you know, meditation and breathing, and then you relax your muscles. So when you meditate and breathe and you relax your muscles, the anxiety begins to go down a little bit. So during this time, you know what? Because of the pandemic, I noticed that I'm more anxious.
Oh yeah.
So I feel, and I thank God I wrote this little book, because I have some strategies that I use where I say, you're feeling anxious. Sometimes I drank too much coffee, and that's why I'm feeling anxious. Other
Caffeine?
times, yes, caffeine can make you feel really anxious if you drink too much of it. But then sometimes I say, okay, so you're feeling anxious. Think, what are you anxious about? And I try to identify why I'm anxious. Sometimes it's legitimate, because, I might be anxious that I went on vacation for a week and now I have 150 emails waiting for me. So I'm anxious about that. But that's something I can control. I can go and look at each of my emails and address each one, so I don't feel as anxious that I have so much work waiting for me that I haven't been able to get to. So there are strategies that you can use, and relaxing and meditating and exercising are just a few of them. If you get the book, it will take you through some exercises to do as well that may be helpful for you.
What if you're in a situation where you're not able to exercise or go through anything like that? Say, for example, crowd shy. What if you just walk into a room and, there's like 20 people and you're crowd shy?
If you're crowd shy, it's the same strategy.
Same thing, just
you
breathe.
You say to yourself, okay, I know, if I know I'm fearful of the MRI.
Okay.
I start self-talking before I get there.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have to go to a crowd, and you know it's going to be crowded. So you start self-talking, how am I going to handle this? You could always stay on the outskirts. That's a strategy, especially. I sometimes do that when I'm at a street fair, because I've been to street fairs in New York where you end up running.
And you're claustrophobic.
And you're running, and you don't know why you're running, but everyone's running, so you're running. And so I'm very funny about large crowds like that. So I always stay. I say, okay, I want to go to this fair, and I want to be able to participate. So when I go, I always sort of stay on the outskirts. But once I'm in the crowd, I'm always looking to see how to get out if I have to get out quickly. That helps me. Most of the time I don't have to get out quickly. It's just a mindset in my head. I know that I have an out if I have to.
I like that. You have an exit plan.
You have an exit plan, yes.
One of my sons has Asperger's syndrome, low end, very low end. I mean, he went to college in Rhode Island. He managed and everything. But early on, he was crowd shy, and I didn't know it. I would drag him. He's 4 years younger than my other son. My other son's played every sport there was.
Yes.
And of course, I'm always late. I have work. I got to pick up two different kids from
high
two different
anxiety
places.
for him,
So
yes.
I'm running in, dragging this little kid in, and he's resisting all the
Yes.
way. And then I learned, we didn't know he had Asperger's at the time. And then we
Yes.
found out, you know, some of the things that made him really uncomfortable. So I had to leave work early.
Yes, yes.
I got to the football stadium early,
Early.
and as the crowd came in gradually, he was able to handle it. Instead of
Yes.
running into like 500 people, just get
Yes.
there early, and as they pile in, because I love the crowds. I
Yes,
had
yes.
homemade signs. I was running touchdowns with the other kid. That was my thing. So,
So,
you just have
yeah.
to find out where your comfort is, what makes you comfortable.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes you have to work a bit to get to the bottom of the fear, like you did with your son, because sometimes
don't know.
there's small fears stacked on top of, they're stacked up. For instance, he knew you were running in late. Now he's anxious about getting on time, and then now he has to go into the crowd. So all those little things kind of stack up, right? I have to say, you know, my daughter, I have an older daughter too. She's, you know, I kind of look back and think if I knew what I know now, I might have done things a little bit differently. I just feel like, you know, she's on the spectrum. Somehow on the spectrum, she does not like change. And me, I'm always ready to do something different. I'm like, oh, got something going different?
Yep.
I'm in, right? She does not like change. So when we moved from New York, she had a change. She had difficulty. I'm like, oh, okay, you know. I'm like, we're moving. But I'm like, okay. And then when we moved from Yonkers to Bridgeport, it was a huge change. She was already in 8th grade. Finally, it dawned on me, she doesn't like change. She doesn't like change. She likes the consistency of knowing what's going to happen. And so those fears for her were, you know, what's going to happen? It's all new. I don't know what to do. You know, when she moved from my house to her own co-op, I had to practically, I'm like, your co-op is ready. It's time
You
to
had to
go.
push her out.
Let's move in. You have the furniture. I'm like, you have to. So the first week or so, I had to really go over and say, hey, you know, anytime you want to come home, you can come home. Just don't worry about not being able to come home or
Right.
feeling like you're just out there by yourself. Oh, she loves it now. Now she's there and she loves it. But that took me learning that was part of her fear. Her fear is the not knowing is part of her fear. And so
Yeah.
I had to make sure that I eased her along instead of dragging
And give her
just like, yes,
notification.
give her
That's
notification.
just like my son that has Asperger's syndrome. It's under that autistic umbrella. I
Yes,
don't know if you
they're
ever
on the
had her
spectrum.
diagnosed or not, but they have a routine
Yes, love
where,
routines.
you know, I had plastic bowls that I just threw away a few years ago. He's 25. I'm like, we got to get rid of these bowls. He want to eat the same foods. He's
All
about
the time.
20 things
Yes.
out of the same
bowl. They
dishes,
like routine.
do the same
Amazing.
thing. And then if like for example, I called her this morning to fill in at 10 o'clock this morning, and she's here at 12. I would have never been able to do that with my son, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm like,
it would
yeah,
have
I'm there.
it would have messed up his whole day. But if you give them notification, like 2 hours notice or a day
Yes.
notice or whatever,
And then
then
they get
they're okay
prepared.
with it. But just to like, you know, put that change on them just like that, just to drop it on them without a moment's notice, it just doesn't work out well.
Yes, it doesn't. So one of the exercises, I just want to just give you one little exercise from this book.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
You want me to
So
try it now?
all right. So it gives an example, right? So, for example, let's say you're afraid of losing your job. A lot of people are fearful
I
of
am.
losing their job. Is that the ultimate fear? It says probably not. More likely, you're afraid of not having enough money to pay the bills or losing the respect of your peers when being forced to restart your career. So basically, that's sort of my fear. Like, I keep a job, but I have these things I do on the side. I keep the job because I'm afraid I won't be able to pay my bills,
Yep.
you know, or do the things that I actually enjoy doing on the side. I mean, not that I don't enjoy my job. I enjoy that too, but there are other things I enjoy as well. And then it said, so when identifying your fears, keep pushing. You have to push until you get to the root cause. What's the root cause of the fear? The root cause is not losing your job. The root cause is having enough money to pay your bills,
Enough
because
money.
If you hit the lottery and you lost your job, you wouldn't care, right? You care, you have the money. So when identifying, keep pushing until you get to the root cause. Work to determine the root fear that is causing all of your other anxieties. Keep asking yourself, so what? For example, so what if I lose my job? I won't make any money. So what if I don't make any money? I can't pay the bills. So what if I can't pay the bills? I can't provide for my family. And you dig until you determine what you're ultimately afraid of. So if you keep saying, so what if I, what if, so what if, you'll eventually get to the root cause. Next, you have to be aware of all the different ways your fear is affecting your life. So for instance, if you're afraid of losing a job you don't like, then you stay in that job. And the fact that you're on a job that you don't like may end up spilling over into other aspects of your life. You know, you may not be as happy when you get home. You may feel anxious when it's time to get up and go to work because you don't like the job, etc. So you have to try to figure out how it's affecting your life. Is it causing you constant emotional distress, keeping you from doing the things you want to do? Some people have jobs where you don't have a lot of days off. So you can't just say, you know, I want to take off 4 days, a 3-day long weekend to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. So it might be keeping you from going on vacation or even from, you know, a little mental health day. That may be difficult. And is it hampering your relationships? Is it hurting your work performance? Is it stealing your happiness? I like that piece.
Yes,
because
I like that.
If that's the first thing you ask yourself, wow, I'm afraid of such and such. Is it stealing my happiness? If the answer is yes, you need to try to work through that fear. And it's preventing you from enjoying the present. So the goal of the exercise is to bring you face to face with the consequences of your fear. And if you'd like to know more, remember, it's in my book, Managing Crippling Emotions. There are several exercises that will help you work through the things that you're afraid of. If you do have a fear, we all do.
Oh, we all do.
Them. Some of them are simple, some of them are large, some of them are.
Well, that was great information. Thank you so much for that information. When you were talking about your job, the one thing I'm fearful of about losing my job, and I lost my job before. We got about 30 seconds left, so I'm gonna tell you this real quick. It's my independence. I don't want to depend on my husband to pay my bills. I gotta pay my own bills, honey. I'm so independent. Anyway, Selena, I wanna thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And she will be back. She will be back.
I'll talk about something else.
Yes, absolutely. Or the same thing. There's so much more to dig into that. So thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful 4th of July. And this is the David Goodman Reality and Truth Show, and we're on your side.